Hi everyone, today we're going to be covering Alibaba stock, which is a stock that I talked about only a few weeks ago on the channel, saying why I'm so bullish on Alibaba. It's a stock that I own, it's a stock I really like, and I made a video saying how I think it's going to go to $300. And also Alibaba had its earnings, and then there was also some news about the chances of Alibaba actually getting delisted off the stock market. And after that kind of came out after the earnings, and then also this news, the stock had a bit of a rough day, and I'm going to be talking about what this can kind of mean for Alibaba, my kind of thoughts on this bill that's just being passed, and what I'm planning to do with my stock going forward. So we've got a lot to go through with Alibaba today, so we'll take a look. So on the day, Alibaba reported earnings that were actually pretty good, but the stock was down nearly 6%. There was an EPS beat, there was a revenue beat, and year over year the revenue grew 22%, which is fantastic for a company that is trying to go obviously through the coronavirus, and obviously the Chinese economy slowdown that it has had to still be putting in 22% year over year growth. Fantastic numbers from Alibaba right there. But obviously the stock moved down because of a lot of what was about the potential delisting of Chinese companies on the New York Stock Exchange. So after this happened, I had a few of you guys message me about this. So what happened is the US Senate passed a bill that could potentially delist a lot of Chinese stocks like Alibaba, Baidu, JD.com. So Alibaba and JD.com are the two companies I own from China. So what this means is Chinese companies go through the same sort of validation as a lot of US companies to make sure they're legitimate. And basically that's what a lot of US companies have to do to be on the stock market. And currently Chinese companies don't do this. And the kind of feeling is that a lot of these Chinese companies are bad companies to be on the US stock exchange and shouldn't be on there, because obviously they're not as they're not viewed as being as legitimate as a US company. And also this kind of feeling means that a lot of people in the US kind of feel like these Chinese companies are kind of lying about these numbers and the fraudsters, and they talk quite negative about this stock. I've heard quite a few people that do invest in US companies kind of say that they lie a lot about their numbers because of not having the kind of accounting that the US companies have. Now it does make sense for like these Chinese companies to go through the same kind of controls that the US companies have to go through. At the same time, we know that because the US also has so honest companies. You know, we know that Donald Trump is such an honest guy. He's never been in any fraud situations. We know one of the biggest companies in America, Apple, that makes iPhones around the world. We know that's such a well-run, legitimate company where they don't slow batteries down in the iPhone. We know companies from the US like Amazon, another truly honest company that pays every single tax as much as they can. They love paying taxes, does Amazon. It's, you know, Alibaba is a very similar company to Amazon, and Amazon pulls out nearly the same growth numbers that Alibaba does. Two very diverse companies, and we know Amazon is a good reflection on the US company, someone that loves paying all them taxes. So Alibaba should be doing stuff like them. You know, Alibaba is the devil in this industry, Amazon's the angel. Alibaba needs to learn something off Amazon. Amazon loves paying all them taxes. General Motors, one of the biggest car producers, once again another really good company that is such honest, they would never lie about making money. So with all these other amazing US companies that are so honest about the numbers, of course Alibaba must be lying about their numbers. They are the enemy in this, surely. So Alibaba definitely needs to start kind of going to these US accounts as well and make sure they're doing a right job, because obviously they're the ones that are in the wrong. US companies are always the right companies. Come on, give me a break. Alibaba, they get targeted quite a bit for not being an honest company, but the US, some of these US companies as well, you can't pretend that they are the angels in all of this. So I think Alibaba is a company that's been perfectly run and is just been targeted because it's a Chinese company, as well as some of these Chinese stocks. So where does all this stem from? This all stems from, one, Donald Trump and his kind of trade war with China, and also we've had Luckin Coffee as well, and that's kind of stemmed from a lot of it. So first of all, let's talk about Donald Trump. So Donald Trump obviously has had a bit of a tiff with China over the last few years since he's been in power. Now, Donald Trump actually has the election coming up soon, and he can't be seen going into a trade war and getting into another trade war with China when the economy is so weak. He's got an election, he's got the stock market. He loves saying how well the stock market's done since he's been in presidency. So Donald Trump needs a good economy, a good stock market. He can't go into another trade war. What's the other thing he can affect? He can start trying to affect a lot of these Chinese companies. So that's one thing that he can try and get back. Obviously, he's not happy with how the coronavirus was dealt with China, and feeling like, you know, they should have been locked down a lot earlier. So there's that as well. Luckin Coffee, obviously, they got into a lot of trouble. They're facing delisting because of them forging a lot of their numbers, some of the money they were making. Now, if you look into that case, who actually found that out? That was actually the accounting control of China, and they actually looked into their figures and found out they were pretty much frauding their numbers right there. So if the Chinese kind of control over this found out they're manipulating their numbers, and they're a Chinese company, the Starbucks over there, they want to overtake Starbucks. Why would they kind of snitch on the Chinese company that is battling away with Starbucks? If they were so corrupt, why are they doing that to their own Chinese company? Is it because they're all in it together? Or is it because they're just honest and they look into companies in China, they're in control, and they look for companies that aren't playing fair and they report them? What happens if China and Alibaba and all these China companies are just honest companies that are made out to look like bad guys? If they were so corrupt, why are they doing that to Luckin Coffee? They would kind of let them go. If they really hated US companies so much, they would let them carry on frauding the numbers so they could knock Starbucks out of China. It kind of like doesn't make sense in my kind of view. So I think there's just kind of an agenda right here against China from that kind of point of view. So from my kind of view, it's just making China, a lot of these Chinese companies, look a bad guy. When Alibaba actually had their earnings, they were questioned about this situation, and they were saying that their earnings are always fine, they always go to US standards. So they're kind of saying, look, if they wanted to investigate, that's absolutely fine, because, you know, we're totally going to the US standards here, which is what I expect. I don't expect anything more from a company that was founded by Jack Ma to kind of be frauding these numbers. I think they're totally fine numbers, and I think there's nothing to worry about. I think it's just a few people that have an agenda against China. I think they're really bad guys and they're kind of all corrupt, when I think they're just being totally honest. And I think if they weren't being honest, why is it that Luckin Coffee got absolutely snitched in? If there was an agenda, that I don't see why they would have brought that out. So yeah, I kind of think that's kind of agenda that's been pushed on China, that they're clean. And let's just say, for example, let's say, I don't think this will happen. Let's say Alibaba have been frauding the numbers. They get regulated and they came in that they've been frauding the numbers for the last few years. What's going to happen? Well, they're going to get delisted. Alibaba are going to move to the Hong Kong exchange, and you'll still have your shares and they'll be on the Hong Kong exchange. So even if that was the worst case scenario, the stock market, their Alibaba shares would go down, but you'd still own your shares in the Hong Kong listing. It'll be totally fine from there. And even if Alibaba wanted to move listings, which I wouldn't blame them after all this. I mean, if I were Alibaba now, I'd be like, you know what? We don't need these guys. Let's just go on the Hong Kong listing, which they were looking at doing not so long ago. And you'd still own your shares over there. So I wouldn't blame Alibaba for actually wanting to move themselves now and just being like, you know what? If this is how you're going to treat us, we'll just go over there. It kind of makes sense. And for me, this is nothing to worry about. I think Alibaba is a well-run company, total honest company, and if any of this gets passed through, gets through the Senate and actually the bill actually goes through and signed by Donald Trump, I think Alibaba is going to be totally fine. So I would not worry. I am not planning to sell any shares because I think it's a totally great company, all honest right there. And to be honest with you, there is potential for the stock just to go down a little bit more from this. So if the stock was to go down maybe another 10%, I'd actually consider buying more shares, to be honest with you. So that's kind of my view on Alibaba. I'm definitely not panicking. I think it's a great company, nothing to worry about. And if the stock does go down another 10%, I'm actually tempted to buy more shares because I like it that much. So overall, I would say there's nothing to worry about with this. And I thought I'd update you guys because I know a few of you guys were getting a bit worried about it. But there's my opinion, guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. As always, you can hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next video.